They have I think a 6-week seminar. Can also add this. Yeah. They have, I believe it was a 6 weeks seminar in Geneva. This was in the last summer of the last century, when I was a much younger man, when I was much more daring in the ideas that I espouse. I became very successful in that seminar, and they asked me to address the International Law Commission with eminent international law jurists. And I remember telling them this Lamin Sane story, and it resonated so much with them. The story goes this way. A very distinguished professor, probably as distinguished as Dr. Dabo, was invited to address an audience as august as this audience. When the professor came, he asked the audience, "Do you know what I have come to talk to you about?" And they said, "Yes." But the professor said, "Well, there is no point talking to people who already know." So he left the meeting place. The invitation was renewed. He was asked. He came and asked the audience, "Do you know what I have come to talk to you about?" The audience, same audience, they felt, well, a positive answer did not get us what we wanted. They said, "No. You know, professors," he said, "well, there is no point talking to ignorant people." So he left the seminar again. On a third and final invitation, he asked the same question. "Do you know what I have come to talk to you about?" You see, this is how human beings learn. A positive answer did not yield the fruit. A negative answer did not yield the fruit. So they have learned that when the professor comes, he is always asking you a trick question. They decided as an audience to give a non-committal answer. Some of us do, and some of us don't. The professor, being the professor, he said, "Let those who know tell those who do not." So the professor did not end up giving any lecture, but he has helped the people to see how you create and curate knowledge. So that's the lesson of the story. Some of us do, some of us don't. So let those who know tell those who do not. I say these preliminaries just so as to make this very clear, that the efforts that we have been doing for the last 60 years as a nation must mean something for all our children. Our homeland is under tremendous stress. It is the responsibility of those who know to tell those who do not know. And I think it's a responsibility also of those who do not know to know those who know. Because that way, it can be a two-way stream. It can be a way of awakening one's own consciousness. So, I will now look at some of the things that I've been putting together over the last few days when I got the invitation to come and speak here. The first quarter of the 21st century has turned out to be very auspicious for the Gambia and for West Africa because of the many milestones we are marking. Like I said, Gambia is celebrating a diamond jubilee of nationhood. But if you go around, you don't have a sense that we are celebrating our jubilee. Mr. President, you are disturbing my comments. And I think that is very disrespectful. We should try as much as possible to be respectful to people we invite to give lectures. I know it's a happy day for all of us, but respect, unless it is given, is not returned. So I was talking about Gambia's Golden Jubilee, why it is important. I also want to mention here that ECOWAS is also celebrating its Diamond Jubilee. I want to combine these two strands to anchor my comments on. You see, the place that we call Gambia, and Senegal, and Burkina Faso, and Mali, these places have always been here. They have existed within a geographical and historical context that goes back at least 1,000 years. I have always wondered why the great Senegalese historian Cheikh Anta Diop did not talk about the civilizations that are in West Africa. I have always wondered about that. Actually, he went further back in time. He went to ancient Kemet, or what we call ancient Egypt, and said that it was a black civilization. I think one of the reasons why Cheikh Anta Diop did not bother a lot about West Africa, so to speak, is because there has been a lot of chronicles and chroniclers about West Africa, starting with the famous Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire of Mansa Musa and Songhai. This we have learned in history. What is not clear to me, the name Ghana, what language is it in? Ghana. Have you, as historians, wondered about that? Because the present-day Ghana was named Ghana by Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Just like Okovolta was renamed Burkina Faso by Thomas Sankara. So when we talk about history of our own countries in this Sahel, we must be conscious, of course, of the Berlin decision that was done about 140 years ago in the late 19th century. That is when you have Senegambia, which from my own research was briefly controlled or colonized by the British. It was after another European tribal war that the current status or the current geographical descriptions that we call Gambia and Senegal were finally settled. But if you look at our map also, you realize that this map is very curious because you have straight lines, you have the same people, across the border, especially just a few kilometers from here in the Casamas. So all of these things have made me extremely curious about the place of a constitution in our development process. Because the language of every constitution that we have had is in English. And it is sustained by the fiction of the incorporation of a territory into a nation state. So these efforts, especially by the founding fathers, must be the area of inquiry for any historical society. But in the Gambia, to come back home, we have just not formed that critical faculty to interrogate the foundations of our nationhood. Last year was Sadauda's centenary. His centenary birthday was celebrated by a similar organization that we have set up called the Kairaba Conservation and Leadership Organization. And we've been trying to revitalize memories and some of the legacies of Sadauda. We felt it is extremely important when you have opportunities like this to just ask random questions. For example, I have been asking Gambians, especially those who speak Wolof or who are Wolof in terms of tribe, the color green, this color green in Wolof. Are there Wolof speakers in this audience? Then you speak Wolof. So can you tell us the color green? How do you say it in Wolof? Werta. I believe that is French. Yes.
The typical Wolof community.
Yes.
Like green.
Yes.
They normally associate it with the grass. They will call it Nyakutoe. Some Wolofs.
Now, this is speculative. I have never had it referred to that. I know where you are coming from. Because in Mandinka, the color green actually is that. Jambakero. So how do you translate that into English? Okay, let's translate it piece by piece. When we say Nimu Kukeroleti, new raw or new in this context is new or fresh leaf, because the leaf can start getting yellow. Some leaves are yellow when they mature. Can you believe this? I asked the Honorable Minister, then Honorable Minister for Trade, when we presented the Banjul Declaration of 1977 to him, who is a Wolof through and through. I asked Professor Jibril Fall, who is also a Wolof, and none of them could answer this simple question. A Minister of State, a university professor, whose native language, since they were born, This is the language they have been communicating with. So there is something disconnected between what we know about our environment and the solution that we can come up with by creating tools. And for me, this is the fundamental issue. What is very, very unique about human beings is their ability to think critically, is their ability to create institutions, is their ability to create tools to solve the problems of being in this world. For example, consider this Republican system of government. Where did it start? Some of you, students of history and political science, you will hear that, oh, democracy was originated by the Greeks. And then you have the republics of Rome. But the most successful post-colonial society is only going to be 250 years old. Which history student can tell me which is the most successful post-colonial state that is going to be 250 years old next year? Which country is that? Which country is that? Huh? There is a post-colonial state. It was colonized by the British. Yeah? It's the United States of America. It's the United States of America. Now, they were the first people who thought that people should govern themselves. What we call self-government or representative government. And it all started with a declaration. In that declaration, one lawyer, again to tell you, you see, Dr. Dabo is in a great tradition. Lawyers, they are always the engineers of society. They came up with these ideas of self-government. And this is the quotation from one Thomas Jefferson. In 1776, this was read before the American, what they call then the Continental Congress, which was made up of a few colonies. Maybe those of you who are history buffs can, or who are interested in history could find out that the United States did not start with 50 states. It started with, I think it was nine colonies or thereabout, but very few colonies. The Declaration of Independence of America or the United States, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For me, the American Declaration of Independence contains the best theory of government in these lines, maybe about 5 or 6 lines, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, that is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter and to abolish and to institute new government laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. This is the American theory of government, that government is created to secure life, liberty, and help you with self-actualization and for the attainment of happiness. That is the only reason why you pay taxes to government. That is why you give them power. So starting from that premise, they crafted a new constitution where they are not going to be led by a king or by a priest, but by somebody that they have elected. Of course, when you talk about the American Declaration of Independence, you have to also be mindful of the fact that it was talking only about men. And when they define men in their other laws, black men were not considered as men. They were considered as property. Of course, with the changes in civil rights and interpretations by their Supreme Court, they realized that all those assumptions were wrong, and they were in fact evil. So that is why when people say that we have to consolidate the rule of law, yes, we have to do that. But the content of those laws must be principally just in every aspect of it. Because you have a constitution in Germany during the Second World War. You have a constitution, or you had a constitution in South Africa that legitimizes discrimination, that sponsored genocide and mistreatment of the majority in the case of South Africa. In the case of Germany, the Jews were exterminated pursuant to laws of the Hitler era. So we have to do this as a nation, to come up with a vision of justice first, to inspire the kind of constitution we want to build. We have to come up with a theory of governance that is not only meritocratic, but is also very empowering to our citizens. We have to get our country moving again. Because nowadays, everywhere you go or you turn, what do people say? Oh, I want to get something from AI. So before you had artificial intelligence, you have to have the artificial person first. All of this is to say that at the individual level, at the personal level, we have agency, but like every child, you did not bring yourself here. Those who brought you here have responsibility to empower you. So the institution of marriage is meant to empower the coming generation and also to legitimize not only affection, but the whole procreation process. So I am talking as if I am the guest lecturer and the guest speaker, but I just thought it would be useful to share a few quotes and ideas to get the audience ready to receive the scholarly lecture that I'm sure Dr. Dabo will give. I will have one other quotation and then maybe wrap up so that our very eminent lecturer can do justice to the day. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles, free man and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guildmaster and journeyman, in a word, oppressor and oppressed, stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight, a fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary reconstitution of society at large or in the common ruin of the contending classes. This statement was first published in February 1848 by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. It comes from the Manifesto of the Communist Party. If you compare it to the Declaration of Independence, you will see similarities. The two quotations are from the American Declaration of Independence, adopted on July 4th, 1776, and the Manifesto of the Communist Party. Both are political advertisements for revolutions. Both were authored by great students of the European Enlightenment, that is Thomas Jefferson and Karl Marx. Both documents contain succinct theories of transformation and theories of the role of government. The main difference between the two documents is that one is premised on individual liberty, or the individual as a unit of society, entire and unique for his own sake. The Declaration of Independence of the United States is also seen as a charter for a libertarian approach to living in a community or living a libertarian life. Whilst the Manifesto of the Communist Party is anchored on the primacy of community as having a better claim for investment, that the individual's happiness is inescapably linked and tied to the happiness of society. These commonalities in the pedigree of these two documents have proved in practice to be antagonistic in the two republics where the theories were applied, namely the USA and USSR. The USSR was dismantled, as you know, more than 35 years ago, while the USA is still the dominant global power 250 years after that declaration was made. What is undeniable about the similarities of the two approaches for organizing the transformation of society is that good government matters. Remarkably, China's rise to the number 2 position as far as the global pecking order is concerned within the lifetimes of most of these post-African leaders must give pause to anyone who wants to discredit the ideas of Karl Marx, because nowadays it's not very popular to talk about communism or socialism, even though there is a young man who is running to be the mayor of New York City, and he called himself a democratic socialist. He's called Zoran Kwame Mamdani. I understand from his biography that his second name was named for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So just to say that whether you call yourself a communist, a socialist, or a capitalist, good government matters, and we need a better understanding of why societies are constituted and why they need constitutions, why they need the rule of law. Ultimately, without a constitution, without the rule of law, a society can degenerate into a conflict zone, as we have seen in places like Sudan, where law and order has practically broken down, and nobody is talking about it. Similarly, in 2007, because of the difficulties of an unfair constitution, Kenya itself descended into violence and chaos. So I would stop here. I would not continue reading this thing because I'm already tired of hearing my own voice. I'm sure the students and Dr. Davo would want to have one or two things to say. But I really feel greatly honored to be in their presence. I feel that these kinds of engagement across the university community and across our society is something that we need to encourage and to do as often as possible. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Tal. Good government matters. Good government matters, which is very important for every nation to progress. And we need to have proper rule of law. Established rule of law is one of those principles that can bring about good government. So it is indeed important that the symposium is converged here today. So, Mr. Tal, thank you once again for the brilliant. As I said, when you speak about it. So, we wouldn't waste more time to call on Uncle Dr. Ture, representative for the form of Vice President, Honorable Mr. Ture will also come and speak to us a little bit, though Mr. Tal already just introducing him, but we will still give him the floor before we call on the Honorable guest speaker. Notwithstanding, there is also a question and answer session that we want participants to take note of. That way you will be able to have the opportunity to also ask questions and then get answers for those questions. Because most of us we have doubts with regards to the constitution and the rule of law in the country. But there is going to be that time given where we will be asking questions. And also refreshment will be provided as we are, though the committee is already on it and they are on their way coming. So please, let's take time to enjoy this together. So Mr. Ture, Dr. Ture, you are highly welcome, Uncle.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Honorable High Table gentlemen, our guest speaker, Honorable Lamin J. Dabo, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to represent with my colleague Burhamandin Jaite, by representing Mr. Dabo, Bibi Dabo as commonly referred to. He is out of town, he is in the UK and is expected back in the next week or so. I don't want to say any more than my friend Almami has said about me. He referred to Sadoda Kairaba Jawara as my mentor. Actually, when I finished school, high school, in those days, we used to have a Cambridge School Certificate. That's what we used to sit to. And there was an examination called Government Entrance. And when you pass the government entrance, you choose which department of government you want to work to. So I did my school certificate examination, and I also did the government entrance examination. And when I passed the government entrance examination, the choice was up to me, but I didn't even know where to go to, which department of government should I go to. And somebody suggested to me, oh, you better go to the veterinary department. There are not a lot of educated people there, so there will be a good chance. And so I decided I will go to the veterinary department. And at that time, Sir Dauda was the director of veterinary services. At that time, it was called Chief Veterinary Officer. So I went to, an interview was arranged, and Sir Dauda interviewed me, and that's how I got into the veterinary department. This was 1960. Most of you were not born. Most of you. And it was the same year that Sir Dauda decided to go into politics at the invitation of the elders from the provinces, namely people like Sanjali Bojang. And Gambia was divided into the colony and the protectorate. And in the early days, elections, democracy, as we talk about, was only in the colony. The people in the protectorate, that is Western Division all the way to Basse, were not involved. So when the people of the protectorate decided that they will also want to participate fully in the governance of this country, they looked for a leader, and Sir Dauda was selected. So that's how Sir Dauda left. I continued with my profession in the veterinary department, and when I qualified as a vet, Sir Dauda was also very instrumental in setting up an institution called International Trypanosome Tolerance Center, ITC. It was very commonly known. Nowadays, when you talk about ITC, it is not the ITC that I'm talking about. So, we are representing Bakari Bunja Dabo. Bakari Bunja Dabo is one person that who contributed very much, contributed to the development of this country in terms of governance. He'd been commissioner, he held several positions in government, and he was vice president for 10 years. So we would have been very pleased to be here to talk to you about what we are going to discuss today. He's very keen, but he is pleased and honored by your invitation and requested us and myself and Buramanding to come and participate in this symposium. We don't want to talk about the topic of today. Your guest speaker will do justice to that, just as Alma Mittal has also laid the foundation. So it is my pleasure on behalf of Bakari Dabo and Buramanding to come and participate. We have brought a very nice present for the History Society of the university, because we've brought you a set of history books. A set of history books, 5 volumes, which we think will be extremely useful for your society and the university at large. There we are. So with that, I would like to hand over to you for the guest speaker.
Thank you so much.
There's one thing. This battle was at the So it's one of the greatest minds.
General History of Africa, UNESCO, and several authors.
Different volumes.
Different volumes. Don't cover your face. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Pardon?
So it's good we get this help.
Yeah.
On behalf of the History Society, University of the Gambia, so our Chief Advisor and the President of the History Society, University of the Gambia, and all the society members here present, we thank you and also thank Honorable former Vice President Mr. Bakari Bunjatabo for this wonderful gesture. This will go a long way in helping us through building the history of the Gambia and that of our learning in our studies in the University of the Gambia as historians. So we thank you, sir, for this benevolent gesture. Let's clap for them, please. Indeed, your service to this great country is something that we, the young people, appreciate a lot. This is what we expect, and that we also hope and pray that we will do our best to serve this country with due diligence and with utmost honesty, with integrity, until we get to that end of your stage as well. So we thank you for that. Now, on the list, as I said, there is going to be question and answer session where participants will be allowed to ask few questions to the speaker, the guest speaker, and maybe others around. But now that we have come this far, we also want to recognize the presence of Dr. Ensa Toure, Professor Ensa Toure, one of the historians. Dr. Professor Ensa Toure is also one of the history lecturers in the University of the Gambia, who the young historians also look up to. He has been a great supporter and a strong pillar for this society. So we thank Mr. Professor Dr. Ensa Toure for being here, and all our history lecturers who, whether they are here or not, but we appreciate them for their tireless effort. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's like we have come to the apex of it, and that I'm sure people are eager to learn a lot from the team today. The draft constitution and the consolidation of the rule of law in the Gambia. Really, this is something, a theme that we are all anticipating to learn and know what exactly our honorable guest speaker have for us today. Honorable guest speaker, once you are here, please help us and educate us a lot on this topic. We have no doubt that you will do that. We have no doubt. And mind you that our historians here are very eager to also understand, have a deep root of knowledge on this theme. And I'm sure they are eager to learn a lot from you today. So on that regard, I would like to call on Dr. Lamin Jedabo, who is the guest speaker of our today's event, to come and give us his insight of this great team. Let us give this gentleman a round of applause. So, Mr. Dabo, you are highly welcome on the podium. Let's clap for him again, please.
Thank you very much. I extend my regards to Professor Fane and senior counsel, like you said, he's my senior counsel, Almana Fandental, who was also a judge of the High Court of the Gambia. So I can call him my Lord Honorable Justice Fandental, Almana Fandental. I also extend my greetings and high regards to Bakari Nyambi Toure. Dr. Bakari Nyambi Toure didn't tell you that he's from Gunjur. He's from Gunjur, and we all look up to him as one of the first highly educated people from that community. In fact, he was among the first people who ventured into the arena of Western education from Gunjur, because his father was a chief, and the children of chiefs got that opportunity. I also greet Mr. Brahman Dinjete, a colleague and a friend of Dr. Bakari Nyambi Toure. And like they said, they are here on behalf of the former Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia. He also served as ambassador to the Republic of Senegal. And he came back home to serve as minister after his critical role in securing the intervention of the Republic of Senegal to reinstall the government of Sadauda, which was effectively overthrown by the Kukwe Rebellion in 1981. I know this because I was working at Ready Gambia at the time. So on behalf of Baby Dabo, we say thank you to Dr. Toure and Mr. Jait. I also extend my regards to Dr. Ensa Toure, an associate professor at the University of the Gambia. I extend my greetings to members of the UTG History Society. As a historian myself, and it is still my first academic love, I prefer history to law. I still read history, not for exams. I'm past that stage, but yes, I'm very much interested in history. So why was I interested in history? Because I like to read, also follow current affairs. The likes of Marcus Tullius Cicero. Cicero was, of course, a Roman statesman, a historian, a writer, a scholar, a philosopher. So he was Rome's answer to the great intellectuals of the era, mostly men and thinkers from the neighboring country of Greece. But so one day his sister-in-law complained to him that she didn't like politics. Cicero was very annoyed by that, and he said, "What is not to like about politics? You might as well say you don't like life itself, for politics is history on the wings." History on the wings, he said, was what politics is about. Because what is political today will become historical tomorrow. For example, 1981, it was a great event in the historical development of the Gambia. 1994 as well, when Yahya Jammeh and his colleagues came and overthrew the government of the PPP under the leadership of Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, the first president of the Republic of the Gambia. So as a historian myself, I am in good company here. But one advice I have for you is don't read history for your exams, in readiness for exams. It's a great discipline. Yes, so don't study history to merely pass your exams, but to become an all-round intellectual. Because if you study history properly, you don't need to study English as a language. You don't need to study philosophy. You don't need to study politics. I call history the queen of the social sciences. So it incorporates all of those disciplines. Yeah, it offers you great opportunity to understand humanity, the human society, and to master language and be exceptionally placed to understand society and how politics and other developments happen in our society. So here we are told to discuss the draft constitution and in the context of the rule of law. So as a national document, the constitution of a democratic society, and this is not the Gambia alone, my senior counsel, Honorable Justice Almari Fandintal, said something about good government. So if you talk about constitutions, even dictatorships have constitutions. Sometimes very nice constitutions, very beautiful constitutions, but just on paper. And that is not what constitutionalism or constitution should be about. It should be about human rights, respect for individuals, all members of society. That is critical. If you don't have that as a foundation of your public life will probably fail. It won't take you anywhere unless, of course, you change course and do what you are supposed to do as a society. So as a national document, the constitution of a democratic society must settle public power in a manner that avoids concentrating authority in any one segment of a political system. In no small way, the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia comprehensively failed this basic test. Yes, there are theoretical delineations, that is, theoretical separations between the executive, the National Assembly, and the judiciary. Between these are the traditional arms of a democratic polity. And the Constitution's self-serving claim of separating power, the reality is completely different. Not only are the legislative and the judicial branches of government accorded inferior status in the 1997 Constitution by making both ultimately answerable to the executive, critical independent agencies necessary to the proper functioning of a democratic society are all similarly degraded. Degraded in the sense that they are there, but they play no meaningful role in the public life of the Gambia. They are just there. In a nutshell, meaningful national power is concentrated in the presidency, in the most benign hands, in the most kind hands. Such concentration of public power can only erode the freedoms essential to creating and nurturing a truly democratic society. In addition, there are express contradictions between key constitutional provisions, as well as considerable fluff, things that need not be in the Constitution. Constitutions are framework documents. You can't give us a constitution that is 200 pages. You look at it straight away and you know that half of that constitution is not necessary. The provisions that are there should go into separate legislation to make it possible for the constitution to operate properly. But they should not be in the constitution. They are not constitutional provisions. The constitution is a framework document to be interpreted by the judiciary, not for you to interpret or to try to interpret everything in the Constitution for the judiciary. That is the organ of state mandated to interpret the laws of any country, but in our case here, the Gambia. Of course, the penchant for amending the Constitution, the 1997 Constitution was amended almost 58 times. The American Constitution, more than 230-something years old, was amended just 27 times in that entire period. Our 1997 Constitution was amended almost 58 times in a space of between, because most of those amendments were done between 1994 and 2001. So you are looking at, 1997 and 2001. So you are looking at a very, very short space of time. So the Constitution effectively was just serving the interest of the executive, then in charge of the Gambia, the executive of His Excellency, President Jammeh. Yes, that is not the way you should approach the democratic life and the constitution of a republican country. So accepting that a polity with big institutions cannot ensure accountability under the best constitution, there is nevertheless a compelling need to retreat from the amalgamation of public power in one branch of government, and this by the supreme law of the Gambia. It was done by the Constitution itself, because its Constitution is not capable of self-implementation. It has to be implemented. So, if you are the president and you don't like a provision of the Constitution, what do? You amend it. But that is your interest alone. It is not the interest of the Republic of the Gambia. Yes. So I argue for the sensible allocation of public power by the proper demarcation, that you create boundaries of constitutional authority between fully independent and internally self-governing branches of government. Yes. And those self-governing branches are the National Assembly, the judiciary, and of course, the all-powerful executive. Because in any setup, in fact, the reason why we have modern constitutions was because the executive cannot control itself. It just wants to control all the public power that is in a country. And that obviously would lead to dictatorship. And it is not in the interest of the country. It is in everything or every way just a monarchy. We call it limited republican government, but in actual fact, it's just a monarchical type of government. Yes. So, and I therefore, for me, I propose efficacious independent agencies that is useful and internally coherent, rationalized, shorter and more democratically robust constitution. The American Constitution can go into our 1997 Constitution maybe 20, 30 times. Yeah. And it is a complicated, sophisticated, highly developed society. So they don't pretend that the executive would have an ability to give us a constitution that can last. Once it is more than 200 pages, it becomes difficult for even the organ that should be advising the government, that is the Attorney General's chambers, to keep track of the contradictions within the document. It can only negatively affect the country. So if we look at the architecture of Gambia's legal regime, it exposes the dual anomaly of laws that are differently applied on the one hand, and laws that internally conflict, incoherent, schizophrenic even on the other. The same constitution would say the president can remove judges if as he pleases. Another section on the removal of judges would say you have to go through the National Assembly. You guess which provision His Excellency President Jammeh uses? The one that gives him the authority to call a judge and said you are fired. Sometimes with no letter, sometimes with a 2-line letter. And you are going home because you know what happens if you want to complain. Yeah. So, however, systemic incoherence of a legal regime in terms of conflicting provisions on the same issues present a more profound challenge to meaningful existence and survival of any nation that prides itself as a plural democracy anchored in the separation of power, which is very, very critical. Separation of power is an arm of the rule of law. In the hierarchy of law, it is common currency that the constitution of a nation sits at the apex. In the Gambia, that state of affairs is expressly enshrined in the actual text of the Constitution of the Gambia 1997. If you look at section 4, there's a supremacy statement there. It says that any law that conflicts with a provision of this constitution is null and void as far as that conflict is concerned. But the constitution, by deliberate design, concentrates power in the hands of the executive to the detriment of pluralism and accountability. It has a very labyrinthine structure. It's very difficult to follow all the provisions of the Constitution. So this guarantees conflict between provisions of the Constitution touching on the same matters, like, for example, the removal of judges. However viewed, this is a matter of great concern. But some observers would, of course, at the time would say, it doesn't matter. The systemic difficulties with the 1997 Constitution were plain to everybody. But there was nothing you can do about it as long as that dispensation remains in power. But now that dispensation was no more since 2017. And we are unable to get a constitution up to now, almost 9, 10 years, going into 10 years, we don't have a replacement constitution. So what happened? Yes, when somebody was running that machine, we were complaining. But when the current government came into power, it continued running that machine the way the former government was doing it, because it works for you. So if you are not an accountable government, You don't want accountability. So you leave laws that are outdated, provisions of the Constitution that shouldn't be there, you leave them intact. Subsidiary legislation or statutory laws that are also detrimental to the state are left there. For example, today, if you take the government of the Gambia to court, you cannot get an injunction against the government because there was a colonial law that prohibited that under the State Proceedings Act. You cannot get an injunction. But we got that law from the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That was where we got the law from. Now, when I was practicing immigration law in the UK, we can make applications to the High Court and remove Gambians on the plane to be deported to the Gambia from the plane back into the UK. Today, you cannot do that in the Gambia. And we got that law from the UK. UK is no longer using it, but we are hanging on to it as if our life depends on it. Yes, this is unaccountable government. It needs to stop. If you look at the Public Order Act, yes, every country needs public order. But the Public Order Act, as we inherited it in 1963, is too draconian. You know, a democratic country that fought for independence and remove the colonial leaders must not use the same laws against their own people. Yes, that is also backward. And you are not interested in the rule of law. You are just interested in protecting yourself. But you reach a point where nobody can protect you. You cannot even protect yourself. That is a reality of public life. It does happen from time to time. Even granting the plausibility that is of the contention that systemic constitutional reform was impossible to 2016, and it was impossible. Yes, because the 1997 Constitution came into effect during the regime of President Jammeh. So obviously, he was not interested in reforming the law. So up to 2016, that was an impossibility. But think about this. You know, the 2016 election was won not because the people of the Gambia didn't like President Jammeh at the time. The president was an equal opportunity tyrant. So what happens? You don't care if somebody is your friend or your enemy. As convenience dictates to you, you punish people. So 2016, everybody, friend or foe, was in danger. So they don't want the government anymore. That was the only reason we were able to get rid of it. So, but the president today is telling us he was the one who killed the lion. So he can do whatever he likes with our laws. He can tilt them to his advantage. That, in the long run, would fail as well. It cannot, those kinds of conduct, as far as public life is concerned, cannot endure permanently. It would have to fail at some stage. This discussion is also germane because no challenge is more profound to national cohesion and survival of a nation than a constitution that serves only the interest of a fraction of the polity, in this case, the executive. So it is not us alone. Even those who are sponsoring us, scholars in other jurisdictions, really were looking at this. And they said, at the heart of any failed state is a constitution that is not performing, either because the balances its drafters struck between competing demands on the document were wrong, or because the machinery, will and resources to make it work are woefully inadequate. This existential point cannot be overemphasized. We have to create neutral documents that are not looking at the interest of particular individuals, especially those that are in authority today, more fundamentally those who are leading the executive branch of the government, because that is where all this misbehavior comes from. As a national document, so the Constitution cannot accept that. It has to settle public power fairly between the different branches of government. And of course, not only the different branches, but between the different branches and the people. That is why we have the Chapter 4 provisions in the 1997 Constitution. Those are the fundamental freedoms. Those fundamental freedoms were not able to be amended because they are entrenched. So if you want to remove them, you have to go to the people and say, okay, we want to remove your freedom to express yourself. We want to remove your freedom to practice your religion. We want to remove your freedom your ability to access academic freedom. Obviously, nobody is going to vote for them. Now, the president would use raw power, bully the judiciary from time to time, and then they will clamp down on the fundamental freedoms. We call them the Chapter 4 freedoms in the 1997 Constitution. So, you know very well that you are not going to be able to change those, so nobody tried to change them because they are entrenched. The National Assembly and the President alone cannot do it, cannot change those provisions of the Constitution, cannot remove them. You have to do it through the cooperation of the public. That is, you have to go to a referendum. And like I said, such referendums would fail. If you say, we want to remove your freedoms, we will say, no, we're not going to vote for that. You cannot come after the whole country and punish everybody. And if you have weak institutions, because that was what my senior counsel here was saying, weak institutions is equal to bad government. Yes. So once you don't have good institutions, your governance would be bad and your country would be backward. There is no question about that. Accepting that a polity with weak institutions cannot ensure accountability under the best constitutions, there is nevertheless a compelling need to retreat from the brazen amalgamation of public power in one branch of government. And that branch of government, as stated earlier, is always the executive. That was responsible for the revolutions that took place in the United Kingdom. Those revolutions were responsible for the changes that took place in France in the 1900s. Those revolutions were the ones that also took place in the United States of America, culminating in the 1789 Constitution of the US. A small document that ensures that governments, presidents in particular, because it's always the executive, stay within the boundaries of their authority. And if you don't, you are taken to court, and the Supreme Court will rule. The Supreme Court, routinely invalidates legislation that conflicts with the Constitution, because that couldn't take place. Even where the call for a properly balanced Constitution is heeded, the recognition must nevertheless remain that no matter how beautifully crafted and appropriately balanced, law has no capacity for self-implementation. It relies on the responsiveness of a political system to the rule of law, both as abstract doctrine and a reliable instrument of practical governance. So again, scholars have been looking at these things. They said worldwide constitutional setups are in a state of flux. As states across Middle East, Africa, and Asia look for successor arrangements to dictatorship, minority rule or anarchy, the pressure on new constitution to provide a stability that can be hardwired into the foundations of the state are immense, because it is in the interest of the people to ensure that you have constitutions that are responsive to the needs of the people to the survival of a country. If anarchy, not from you and I, but from the dictatorial government continues, it will collapse eventually by violence. And of course, that is not to the interest of anybody, but ultimately it will collapse. That is just the nature of human affairs. So in the Gambia, the constitution is devoid of serious beauty, due mainly to the apparent absence of any real intention to ground the polity in objectively verifiable rule of law. These may be attributable to the fact that the political midwives of the Constitution, those who would assist a woman give birth. So in this case, if you talk about that in the context of our Constitution, we are simply saying the political midwives was the government in power in 1996, 1997 that brought the Constitution to fruition. Yeah, they were interested. They had absolute power. They were interested, and they wielded the veto. So if you don't want it, it wouldn't be there. Not knowing that you are digging, your own destruction ultimately, because that is what will happen. Yes. So this failure to adhere to the rule of law really is not in the interest of, particularly of those who are in government. Yes. So what this means is that the 1997 Constitution is a document that has immense potential for violence. Yeah, if you want to be violent, you can really be violent using the law itself, the Constitution. A crisis, any crisis in governance, is therefore only solvable via the agency of raw power. So instead of adhering to the law, you use your power, you use your NIA, you use your police, you use your military, and then you threaten people and detain them unlawfully. Once you do that once, twice, three times, there is still an underground resistance. But really, a lot of people would be very careful. It's like the Mandinka proverb. Your mother, your father would probably tell you, why don't you leave this government to do what it wants? Yeah. So it does not work for anybody. Now we are talking about the draft constitution and the consolidation of the rule of law in the Gambia. Considering Islam, this discussion makes no attempt to rewrite the constitution provision for provision. But now we are looking at why the rule of law is very, very important. Because if people are unable to breathe, they will eventually turn back on you, destroy your government, maybe in the process destroy the country as well. You cannot do the rebuilding. It will take years and years and years, and it will just consolidate the disdain of other countries around the world, especially the Western democracies. The non-Black communities would say they can govern themselves. That is the way things are all across Africa. Is that a reality? Yes. You can discuss the nuances, but it is, as a general principle, that is a reality. So, consequently, the focus is on the basic ingredients that must go into a modern democratic constitution to pass the crucial test of separated power. Power has to be separated, otherwise there cannot be any rule of law. The demand of the separation of public power is premised on the need to ensure liberty of the person. This was what some of the key proponents of the American Federal Constitution in 1788, before the coming of the 1789 Constitution. America, of course, they debate everything. Yeah. So during those debates in the year to 1789, so that is 1788, some of the public intellectuals, the key public intellectuals of the era. And of course, these were James Madison. They wrote the Federalist Papers. They don't want a segmented America. They want an America that is a federalist state with a lot of power that can, because the era, obviously the colonial powers of Europe were still very active in the Americas, and America was a young republic at the time. So they need to protect themselves. So in the Federalist Papers, the likes of James Madison contended that the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. Tyranny is dictatorship, controlling the public space as if it belongs to you, when in actual fact, that is not the case. So according to Madison, relying on Montesquieu, Montesquieu, of course, was a French politician himself, and philosopher. They said the separation of powers is the preservation of liberty, and it requires that the three great departments of power should be separate and distinct. The proposition that no society can begin to approach completeness in the absence of explicit rules which are understood by and applicable to all without distinction is unassailable. People need to know the law, and the law must be applicable to everybody, because without that, the country cannot go anywhere. People will be tired and they will rebel against your government, and that is not good for the public life. For those in this hall who remember 1981, the destruction in the Gambia was unbelievable. Yeah, and that was just over a period of 4 or 5 days. Yes. So I was working at Radio Gambia at the time, so when it happened, Radio Gambia was attacked. They said people like us were all killed. So obviously, you could imagine the relief when I went back to Gunjur, in one of the military trucks, when the conflict was even raging, the Senegalese soldiers were here. I could have escaped Radio Gambia and then put myself in trouble by traveling from Sukuta to Gunjur in the dead of night with rains. Rain was all over the place during those July days, from the 28th all the way to the, early August. The rains were ferocious. Yeah. So the proposition, so this is what we have to do. There is compelling truth to the contention that no society can meaningfully endure in a climate where lawlessness pervades the spirit of its public life. Lawlessness, in this case, from the government itself, because here, our lawlessness is mainly from the governments. Yeah. As a concept, the rule of law is one of those political and governance principles whose ostensible embrace by dictators and democrats alike makes it susceptible to perverse interpretation and the confusion naturally attendant to that abuse. Senior counsel, His Lordship, said that here before, So you can say, I am a democratic country when you are a totalitarian country, like Soviet Union was a totalitarian country before the collapse of the Soviet Empire in 1991. It was a totalitarian country. So it cannot compete with the United States at the time. Just look at the development between the two societies. The people in one country are free and developed, with economic benefits for everybody. The people in the other country are the direct opposite. People struggle for their food, but those in political authority could afford everything. Big yachts, major houses at the expense of the state. So when we say, let us try and promote the rule of law. Don't say no. The government I support is in power. Governments are temporary. They come and go. The country, the Republic of the Gambia, remains. So nobody should support anybody because you belong to that party. Parties don't govern, people govern. If you want good governance, you have to distinguish between those available to you. Yes, and go ahead and empower those people. So now you ask yourself the question, with all these challenges we had with the 1997 Constitution, why is it so impossible for us to have a replacement constitution that, of course, would be amenable to the democratic dictates of our country? Say, for example, the draft constitutions that we are told to talk about. 2 attempts were made. 2020, the drafts were inadequate. 2020 was inadequate in several areas, but it could have been negotiated. Yes, the Constitutional Review Commission was of the view that what it presented has to be accepted as a whole or rejected as a whole. That is not the position of the law. The National Assembly has the ability to look at legislation and decide what to do with it. So it can look at that legislation and do amendments. All we needed were amendments for the National Assembly to pass the 2020 draft. Now, if you look at the 2020 draft, say, for example, it says that the president's term should start in 2017 when he first came to office. Obviously, that would be retroactive. If the country agrees to it, it could happen. But if it is contentious, even if it goes to the Supreme Court would not agree to that. It was not tested. So we don't know what the Supreme Court would have done. But that was not necessary because the politics, it collapsed in the National Assembly because the politicians couldn't negotiate. They couldn't trust each other. So it collapsed in 2026. But that retroactive clause was one of the key reasons. Yes, the president believed that it shouldn't apply to him because the thing was not even law at the time. And that is, there is a valid argument in that because the 2020 draft itself says that it comes into effect after the referendum, a day after the referendum. So this thing is making the rounds politically. It didn't even pass the National Assembly. And you want to apply it to the president who came to office in 2017. You want to say that that law should become effective in 2017. When in January of 2017, of course, was it the 19th or the 21st, the President Adama Barrow commenced his first term. You cannot apply that to him, regardless of, except if Adama Barrow and the political establishment at the time agreed to that. But otherwise, there is compelling legal argument that it wouldn't make any sense because the Constitution itself says it comes into effect the day after it was passed in a referendum by the people. So if that is the case, how could you apply it to the president? So that was one of the main reasons why it failed. I also oppose it. Obviously, I was one of the key people to oppose it because a good chunk of the Constitution was copied from the 2010 Constitution of Kenya. I was unhappy about that as a sovereign country. I didn't think that should have happened after such huge amounts of money were allocated to the Constitutional Review Commission, after they even had the opportunity to travel outside the Gambia at the expense of the people. Why should they not be able? You can study some of these things because if you look at the fundamental freedoms, they all go back to say the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the governments that the constitutions that came out of those. But more fundamentally, to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the precursor instruments that were responsible for the UN Charter. Yeah, so obviously the fundamental freedoms, we could cooperate on that in those things because the understanding is the same. The European Convention on Human Rights is the same, is very close to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is very close to what the Americans call the Bill of Rights, that is the first 10 amendments to the American Constitution. So they came into effect at the same time with the American Constitution. And they became the bedrock of freedom for the people of the United States against these overpowerful executive governments. So, yes, we could copy each other when we are dealing with those. But Gambia's condition is not exactly the same as Kenya's condition, except for the fundamental freedoms. Yes. So I was also opposed to the fact that the judges, a judge would get, say, right now about $150,000 per month as pension. Now, a teacher, even our eminent doctor here, yes, maybe from when he worked for the ITC, the International Tribunal Tolerance Center, when he worked there, that was an international appointment, so that has nothing to do with Gambia. Yes, but otherwise, his pension would have paled into insignificance with the monthly pension of a judge. I thought that was very unfair. So I opposed the Constitution 2020 on that basis as well. And, I didn't go to radios alone. I wrote extensively on them. I believe that those who work for the public sector should have the opportunity to retire on a decent pension. So that was one of the other reasons that I oppose it. Yes, but coming to the 2024 draft, yes, what the government did was wrong. It did not consult on the draft. When the 2020 failed, instead of political collaboration, they did not collaborate. They just went behind bars, and came up with the 2024 draft. That's why people call it the Barrow draft. Yes, so it was opposed. We knew it would fail in the National Assembly because the UDP leader said even if a dot is removed from the 2020 draft, the UDP would oppose it. So with that threat, it had no chance of survival. But again, it was a lack of political will. Seeing what we went through all the way to 2016, obviously a new constitution for the Gambia should not have been a problem. The political deadlock was a matter of great concern. It was failure at the level of the politics in the Gambia, whether that politics is within political parties or the members of those political parties within the National Assembly. But once a political party did not support it, and it has significant representation in the National Assembly, there was no chance for them. So this is what we are still dealing with. Now we are confronted with an entrenched government. An entrenched government, we're going to elections with an entrenched government, and he can win just by one vote. If he has, say, 10 votes, other parties have 8 or 9 votes, it doesn't matter. Their votes together are more than his, but he's first past the post, so he will win. Yeah. So some people are of the view that it's better to compromise on that, so that later on you'll have an opportunity to look at those anomalies and rectify them. But obviously there was dispute about that as far as the politics was concerned. So for me here, the key message is not whether the 2020 or the 2024 failed. the key message should be, we should try to control our political leaders, not those in government, but even those in opposition. Yes, we must not do their bidding all the time. We cannot support them blindly. Nobody feeds your family, you feed your own family. So you must not be blind to those realities to the extent that you endorse everything that comes from your party. So at the end of the day, this is what we have to do. We are now almost at the tail end of 2025. If there is political commitment, yes, by March, April of next year, we should have a new constitution. Yes. March, April, yes, we should have a new constitution if there is political will there, because there are entrenched provisions, not only general provisions, entrenched provisions. So for that to materialize, if you want to change the constitution, you are going to have to go over a 6-month period, minimum 6 months, because there'll be the logistics within the National Assembly, the announcements and the gazette and things like that, the votes, the referendum. So that can take all the way to between 6 and 9 months. It's a very tight window, but if there is political will, it can be done. Yes, we can harmonize all the one constitution, the 1997 current constitution, and the 2 drafts. They can be harmonized. Yes, we know how that should be done. We can do that. Remove the anti-democratic provisions out of the constitution and the 2 drafts and get something that we can work with as a people. Yeah. So this is what my own, because we can go into the details, but there is not much difference really between the 2020 draft and the 2024 draft. Minor differences that shouldn't collapse a political dialogue if there is will for that dialogue. So that's the takeaway for you. I don't know whether you have school newspapers or university newspapers. You have magazines that you can drum support in, against the government, against political parties, and say, look, let's come together. This is what is in the best interest of the country, and move this country forward. Yeah, we can do that, but we have to have the political will. It is absolutely necessary. But this is the problem, is where we are today. We are trapped because of political impasse between the different players within the National Assembly. Yeah, the political impasse there, the payback time, if you like. Some people are saying, okay, the government collapsed the 2020 draft. We are going to collapse the 2024 draft. But I think between the two of them, a compromise can be worked out, and we can go into the 2026 elections knowing full well that no single person is going to be allowed to destroy our country. We can't allow the leaders to do it. Yeah, and so before it becomes law, we have to go through the political process. And that is where the difficulty is. But I believe, the politicians can work it out. They can work it out. They can come to a kind of a compromise. Take the most controversial provisions out and then deal with the text. Once you are able to agree the text, you can do the amendments. You can do the amendments over time. You can do the amendments over time. So that's where we are. So you want us to talk about the drafts. That is the fate of the drafts. Nobody can do anything about it other than the president in collaboration with the opposition. Yeah, the president was wrong to go behind the scenes without consultation to bring the 2024 draft out. That one is not necessary. So the government is entirely responsible for the failure of the 2024 draft. Even though from within the public, there was sizable support for the 2024 draft, but even if there is not, we can harmonize these three. That is possible. Rush it through the National Assembly, the people will vote for it, and then we have something that we can work with. But right now, it's an advantage for the incumbent president. The provisions in the Constitution, the president famously said, he has the laws that Jammeh had, he had the military, he had the police, and, so obviously that is it. Then you have the Constitution. The Constitution, obviously, is not, 1997 Constitution, is not something we should go with to 2026 if it can be avoided. But of course, it's a tall order, is very, very difficult. Actualizing it would be a Herculean task. So politicians would want to, they would have to negotiate. Unless you are able to negotiate those things, there's absolutely no way we can get a new constitution. And it's the same. I believe we can. This is a whole country. In fact, some people said, let's edit the 1997 one. We didn't even need the 2020 or the 2024. Editing the 1997 would do it. I believe it could do it. People like Khalifa Saleh propounded that possibility. But of course, people didn't take it seriously. We think anything coming from Yahya Jammeh, of course, is poisonous. That is not the case. 1997 could have been edited. Yeah, we could take the anti-democratic provisions from out of the Constitution and move the country forward. So the challenge is your leaders. If you don't want the 1997, you have to persuade the political leadership of the government and the opposition to compromise and give us a constitution that would get the support of the general public. Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon. One of the speakers here said, those who don't know should ask those who know, but again, those who know should also be willing to talk to those who don't know. I believe this gathering here has actually manifested that. We have invited people who know. Not necessarily misquoting. I think I just want to kind of paraphrase what he said. But again, I think those that we invite here they've actually shown us that they actually know what they are talking about, and it is now our turn to clear our doubts, to ask questions, because that is one way for us to be able to widen our knowledge. As they are speaking, we must have questions that we want to ask them in order to clear our doubt, and this is the time for that. But before that, I want to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Lamin J. Dabo. He has actually done justice to the topic. There could have been no better way to put this than the way he actually does. And one thing that actually struck me based on what he said is that we as students should not just learn history to merely pass exams, because that is not the essence of history. Because history, as someone put it, is more than the path left by the past. It influences the present and can really help shape the future. For instance, the question, the theme that we have here, we're talking about the draft constitution and the consolidation of rule of law. What have we learned in 2021? Because, sorry, in the 2020 draft constitution, it was taken to the National Assembly, but it was buried. The 2024 draft also a similar thing. So we are talking about having another one. How are we convinced that that is also not going to be like the other two draft constitutions? So this is where history comes to play. What can we do differently to make sure that the next draft we are going to have is going to be a successful one? And I think that is the essence of this discussion. And remember, as Dr. Dabo mentioned, that having good laws is not just enough. Those good laws must be implemented. But to implement laws are laws. Who actually implement the laws? There are bodies to do that. We, the people, collectively. Whether you obey it or you implement it, you are part of the individual that enforce the law. But again, we have our leaders. If we just allow them to go without any form of checks and the like, what is going to happen? With time, they will start ignoring the laws, because these laws are meant to guide us, to protect us, and to pave the development path for us. So on that note, I want you to actually give a round of applause to our guest speaker. He is doing justice to you. So the question and answer session is going to go this way. We are going to give you a chance. At least 3 individuals will ask question. Then we allow the guest speaker or any one of them to respond, please. And when you are stating the question, it has to be direct. Like, let the question be direct, and also let us keep it short so that we can have more people to ask questions. Because I understand there are so many people who really want to ask question, please. And with that, I am going to give you the opportunity to ask question. Please state your name and your school, if possible, your level of study as well. Thank you. Okay. Sorry.
Good afternoon, the invited guests, and to all those present here. I am Abdullah, a final year student in English language, School of Education, University of the Gambia. So I have 2 questions here. But then the first one would be directed to Mr. Dr. Armani. Sorry, Taz. Okay, as a former lecturer at the Law Faculty, University of the Gambia, and a former High Court judge, I want to ask you a question on an issue that has sparked public outrage and legal debate. That is the starting of the former Auditor General. So I want to know, based on your legal expertise, and then being a former High Court judge, I want to believe you are often with the laws of the country. So was the starting of the former Auditor General constitutional? Yes or no, and why? And then the other one would be directed to our honorable guest speaker, lawyer, barrister, and a legal scholar, Dr. Lamin Dabo. What, in your legal expertise, do you think could be done to end the constitutional impasse of this country, considering that both the 2020 and the 2024 draft constitution could not be passed into laws?
Yeah, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Abdullah Ba. And again, let us try to keep the questions short and then so that we have more people. But that was actually a good one, right? Yes, Uncle. Okay, well, let's have 3 questions so that.
Good afternoon. I am Usman Keba Kebe. I'm a final year student at the university studying history. My question is going to the guest speaker. We have had a very wonderful presentation. Now, in thinking of the way forward for the next constitution, what is the legal institution in this country? Not necessarily only the National Assembly, but the bar association, for example. These are an association who knows about the law. Probably constitutionally they are not responsible of interpreting. But what can the bar association and the legal practitioners in this country can help, not only the politician, because we want to believe that the politicians sometimes are not offended with the constitution, the content. And therefore they look at one side, as you said, I'm a party member and my party is in power, and therefore whatever I will support. What is the legal institution that is not in government doing to make sure that at least some of this row of the constitution is solved? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Adam Dafe. So my question will be going to Lawyer Almami Tal. Thank you so much for that presentation you gave us. According to what you display here, you are a very principled person. So I would like to ask the question. You mentioned that you asked one of the minister and the professor of a university the color green in their local language. So I would like to ask, what was the reason why you asked the question? For instance, I would like to reflect that question back to me. I'm a Mandinka, but I'm raised in a Wolof family. So I can't speak a correct Mandinka. So I just put myself in that position of those people. What if I was in the group and you asked the question about the color of green in my local language? Obviously, I wouldn't be able to answer the question. And I'm a Mandinka from both sides, the side of my mom and the side of my dad, and I can speak a correct Mandinka.
Thank you so much for those wonderful questions. And I believe the speakers are going to respond.
Let me do that.
You know the one about.
Well, maybe it will be easier if we take the answers in reverse. I mean, I want your help to answer her question. You see, being Mandinka or Wolof or Fula or Jola, these are identity claims that are very, very fluid within the context of the Gambia. The common denominator to our identity as Gambians is our faiths. Either you are a Muslim or a Christian. And if you are a Muslim, you are allowed to marry a Christian. If you are a Christian, you are allowed to marry a Muslim according to the Civil Marriages Act. So surnames and ethnic purity has long disappeared from the equation. However, the languages, they stay. And I was making this contribution within the context of our historical consciousness. How do you relate your history to the geography you are living in? How do you understand or explain your history in your own language? I hear this word often in our local languages, in our vernacular. This is the way we talk about our languages. They are our languages. We are local to the Gambia, so they are obviously going to. But there is almost like a stigma to speaking Wolof, Mandinka, Fula, Jola, Manjago within academic circles. I'm very pleased that my dear brother, Dr. For more than 20 years now, before he was a doctor, we are very good friends. And we have had very lively discussions. Because, in our languages themselves, there is a lot of knowledge that we have not been able to extract because we cannot speak the language as well as we ought to. I remember I'm making this conversation now that the great lecturer has spoken, so that we can all have takeaways when we go home. I remember my wife was graduating for her first master's degree in Australia. I went to support her graduate, and it was a great opportunity to visit Australia. I don't think I will ever have the opportunity to go there. So we were going around, we visited a health food shop, and we saw baobab, bui, sito. 100 grams of it was $10. That is how much it is sold for. They said it is a superfood. I have been eating bui, sito all my life. When we make the rui or mono, we add it there. There is a lot of fiber, there are a lot of useful minerals. But my illiterate mother and father gave me those things when I was a baby. But they could not articulate the nutritional scientific value of that. So this is the reason why I ask a university professor, I ask a minister of state, because this is to show the gaps that are there in our knowledge of the external world. This is also the gap that is there within the context of our challenges. And so you would also link this to the quotation that I shared from Professor Sane, that you have to make this connection between the knowledge that you get from the university and your actual realities. If you are building an institution, whether it's a cultural institution or it's a political or a social institution, it must spring from your own realities. And that's the reason why I ask this question. You come to the university to ask questions that have been like a light bulb in your own head, because it's really very fascinating. That basic thing. And we are losing a lot of our heritage. You as historians or students of history or seekers of knowledge, this is your task. People now talk about AI, artificial intelligence. These are all things that were invented by people who are not smarter than you. Everything you see around you was invented by other human beings. So we create tools, we use these tools to be able to solve our problems as they arise. So really, I think you have a responsibility now. Whenever you see something that you do not understand, you try to find, where does this thing originate from? So that was the reason why I asked it. It wasn't meant to embarrass the minister or the professor. And I'm glad that they did not also see it that way. It actually got them thinking about this. Interestingly, I went to Marina also to present the Banjul Declaration. The Banjul Declaration, I think, is one of our fundamental documents to have grown out of our political evolution. It was a declaration made in 1977 by the first president, and the commitment to conserving our natural environment, this heritage that he said has taken millions of years of evolution to have them. So if we are going to lose our culture, we are going to also lose our identity. And your generation, the so-called Gen Z, and people who are now becoming conscious, are bombarded by a lot of things, and they don't make the connection directly to their own culture, to their own place in the universe. You have a right to be here. You have a right to know how all these things came about. I think I have responded. I don't know when I have answered your question, but that was the point. Because when you talk to people at a higher level, you must try to reach them at that level. I hope you understand it that way as well. It's for all of us to be able to speak Wolof, Mandinka, Fula, Jola. It's not difficult. If you are in an environment where they speak Manjago as a child, you will pick it naturally. Even up to the death of both my parents, they could not speak Wolof very well. But I was born in Banjo. I picked it almost, I don't even remember when I picked it. But interestingly, some of my friends that I grew up with can also speak Mandinka, because when they come to my father's house, they have to interact with both my father and my mother. So a language is a skill, is the vehicle through which thought is expressed. So you would hear, at least we had in our time, Jawara's own definition, Sadauda's own definition of democracy. Niman kuke kutela. Very succinct. And democracy, they will tell you, is two words, and all of it is from Greece. This is what it means. But within the context and within the philosophy or worldview of a responsible democrat like Sadauda, I think one of the greatest democrats in Africa, this is my own opinion, is that if you have not done anything, nothing will happen to you. That's the literal translation. Then he also talked about a development philosophy called Tacito. Within these ideas, if you know the language very well, it enables you to engage very confidently. What we have had from the eminent lecturer is very profound. And I hope you all have done the takeaways. Because I remember there was this Africa debate that the BBC conducted at the very beginning of this transition in 2017. I was sitting with the now Minister of Works, then he was the director of GRTS. And when the question and answer time came, I did not want to embarrass him, and I told him, I said, but why didn't we organize this in the Gambia? We have GRTS, we have a television studio, why can't we have this dialogue? Why can't we talk about the Gambia, especially what we are going through? He told me, Amami, honestly, I don't know why. So when I was responding, when I was asking my question, or when I was responding to the question of the moderator, I said that we have actually found ourselves. Well, you see, say that I shouldn't talk. I came here, so I have to talk. Yeah, but I said we have a crisis of confidence and we had a crisis of competence. Because we had no confidence to propose a way out of the so-called impasse. Because the way Yahya Jammeh left was the threat of force by ECOWAS. But up to now, we don't have a successful way of transitioning from one government to the next. It's not in the Constitution. So to come back to your question, Dr. Dabo is actually the lawyer of the Auditor General. As far as I'm concerned, he is still the Auditor General because it's a constitutional office, one. Two, there is a laid down procedure for his removal. So it's both unconstitutional and whatever has been done is a nullity. I'm sure when the Supreme Court decides the matter, it is very similar to the case of Yakumba Jaite. And I hope that answers your question. I think these are the two questions that were directed at me.
Yes, what is the legal fraternity?
Oh no, but that's for Dr. Dabo. Thank you very much.
You see, I want us to be very careful. The matter of the Auditor General is before the courts. So let us be careful. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to make some legal opinions on that matter.
You can comment. You can comment on it. Yeah. I mean, the matter being sub judice is, strictly speaking, for legal practitioners, for government officials, but for ordinary citizens, these are open trials. You can share your opinion. The court is not bound by it. The court is not interested in it, unless, of course, you are an expert, a historian who can explain this matter. So this whole idea, I think Dr. Dabo said it in his lecture, these are anti-democratic tendencies that procedural law tries to foist on the people to distract them from serving their basic or fundamental human rights. Yeah.
The debate about what can be done, I think it's a political decision. The politicians would have to come together to ensure that they negotiate. But the way the law is, obviously, the bill would come from the Attorney General's chambers. It will go to the National Assembly. It has to be debated. The politicians would have to pronounce their decisions on whether another draft would succeed. So nobody can force anybody to pass it. I would recommend political dialogue between the different political parties. Yeah.
In addition to that, I think 2016 coalition presented an agenda to the candidates. 2016. Three main issues we were promised. We will make a new constitution, and we will do institutional reforms, and we will make sectoral reforms. We voted in 2016 based on those three promises. In 2016, during the campaign, the coalition partners never promised us that they would bring votes, They never promised that they would build schools. They never promised that they would build bridges. These were the three cardinal promises given. Has any one of those three areas been fulfilled? The coalition was tested. They said 3 years, they failed. When 5 years, Barrow sought re-election, Gambians voted for him without fulfilling those three cardinal promises. We gave him a second time, 5 years. Has any of those three promises still been fulfilled? And they are coming again. Politicians are coming again. Whether Barrow, those supposed to Barrow, 2016, most of them were all together. In 2016-17, when the first National Assembly came, the first conditions they changed was the age limit. Because that was all of them. Then there was a provision where if Gambia or the president dismiss a National Assembly member, you lose your seat. They changed that because that was all the National Assembly members, all the politicians at that time. But the Public Order Act, that is draconian, undemocratic, they never debate that. Now, the political debate, the guest speaker is saying, in my view, that is what Shakespeare will say, much ado about nothing. Let the Gambians vote, wait for the politicians at the ballot. Whoever is proven not to fulfill his or her promises, we politically punish that person with our votes. In my view, I think that is the best. We will never have any constitution. But the commander-in-chief is not serious about it. He gave the promise. If the president wanted that 2020 constitution to be passed, it will have been passed. We've seen the Minister of Justice who presented that draft to the National Assembly never defended that 2020 draft. The minister never defended that. Because they already had a preconceived mind about it. We will not have a new constitution. Let's wait for them at the ballot. Period.
Now that I have the mic, I just wanted to express a view, which is slightly different from Dr. Davo's view on this constitutional principle of term limit. Because there is a view, a very respectable view, that the 2020 draft was talking about retroactive provisions as far as the term limit is concerned. My opinion, and I share this with the former Attorney General, is that actually it was a drafting failure that got us to that point. The drafters of the 2020 Constitution made a fatal error, in my opinion. The fatal error was to try and clarify crystal. You have a crystal piece, you still rub it very hard until there is a scratch. This way, the principle is that no person shall serve for more than 10 years or 2 terms consecutively. That's the constitutional principle. And the history of this provision emanates again from the United States. The first president of the United States, George Washington, served 2 terms and left the presidents. Because they did not have any other models. They had kings. So when they came to do self-government, some were even saying he should be life president. So they said no. He set the example. And it went unchallenged because the second president of the US served one term and he was defeated. John Adams. He was defeated by Thomas Jefferson. All the presidents since George Washington were serving 2 terms maximum. It was the first Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, who was vice president. The president, William McKinley, was assassinated before he assumed office in 1901. So when Theodore Roosevelt or Teddy Roosevelt won in his own right in 1904, in his acceptance speech, he said that he will not seek another term to be faithful to what George Washington had left behind. However, he changed his mind because the person who succeeded him, he felt wasn't doing a good job, President William Howard Taft. I'm an amateur historian. I'm not a historian like Dr. Davo, but because of my own interests, obviously, and the legal implications of this narrative that the 2020 draft is talking about retroactive effect. But the constitutional principle of term limit was broken, really, or was clarified by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the FDR. He went for 4 terms. He died on the 4th year of his 4th term. The president who succeeded him, Truman, the first act that he passed in the Congress of the United States was to provide specifically for an amendment of the Constitution to have term limits. But not only term limits, that even if at all you have served 1 year, no, 2 years of a term that you were not elected to, it will be counted as your own term. There is an American jurist called Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was a Supreme Court judge. He said the life of the law is not logic. It is experience. Everybody who is engaged, every nation that is engaged in self-government must draw from its own experience to build the institutions that they need for their transformation. So lastly, to make this point, that the draft 2020 clause, if you read it, is very clear that the intent is to have term limit. But the CRC, in their overzealous desire to ensure that this is beyond controversy, personalize the Constitution. All the provisions in the Constitution, they are impersonal. They are impersonal to the extent that when the new order comes, any other law that contradicts that Constitution, that law falls. So I just want to submit most sincerely to the very distinguished learned lecturer that if we agree that the principle is that there will be a term limit for the presidency, because nobody has a vested right in the office of the presidency. So the question of second or fourth term really, strictly speaking, does not arise. The Constitution just explains what the qualifications are to be president. Not even political parties are not mentioned. It's an individual right that you acquire when the Gambians have voted you in. So to say that the term of the incumbent president should not be counted, where did he have his presidency? Did he have it in space? The state continues. We have inherited all the debts of the states, all the problems of the state, all the laws of the state. So why should any occupant of an office be carved out because the law has not been made yet? So my argument has always been this question of retroactive application of a section does not really arise. It only arose because the drafting team went ahead to personalize a sound constitutional principle which did not need any further clarification or elaboration. If the incumbent president felt that his first term should not be counted, then let him go to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court will decide that matter. This has been my view about this, especially this term limit issue. It has a history and we cannot dismiss that history because most of these practices are inherited from our experience with the wider world. Thank you very much for allowing me to add that to the conversation.
Thank you so much for that response. And please, the reason why we want the questions to be short and precise is for us to allow more people to ask questions so that it will be interactive. Okay, so let us slide so that the questions are direct. So that will also help the panelists to also answer the questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olu Diouf.